Your favorite PGA and LPGA legends, pros and top instructors are right here every week on Next on the Tee. Join Chris as the greats of the game share their stories, insights and playing lessons. Now, back to Chris and more of the show.
All right, now joining me is my co-host from the football side, Thursday Night Tailgate, and that's Mr. Bob Lazzari. Bob co-hosted the show with me a few weeks ago when we had the pleasure of interviewing Nathan Grube, who is the tournament director for the Travelers Championship at TPC River Highlands up in Cromwell, Connecticut, which was won by Bubba Watson, who shot an amazing final round 63 to come from 6 shots back and to win by 3. You can check out Bob and I talking with NFL legends, players, coaches, media members from around the country every Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, live on Blog Talk Radio. You can also stream the show as a podcast over on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Audio Boom. This week, our guests are going to be former Bills wide receiver Don Beebe, former Patriots Pro Bowl running back Tony Collins, who joins us every week, former Steelers and Seahawks linebacker Chad Brown, former president of HBO Sports, Ross Greenberg, and then former Jets defensive back Victor Green. All will be joining us this Thursday night from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. So we're very much looking forward to this week's show, and it's great to have Bob with me again tonight here on Next on the Tee. Good evening, Bob. How are you, my friend?
Hey, Chris. Happy 4th to you, and I hope everything's well with you.
I appreciate you. Happy 4th to you as well, and a shout out to your father and all our veterans listening in tonight on the Armed Forces Radio Network for their service to our country. Bob, your father was a veteran, so we owe him a debt of gratitude as well.
Well, I appreciate it, Chris. It's always good to honor these men on a daily basis, but days like this makes you take a little bit of a closer look. And again, shout out to all those brave heroes out there.
Yes, indeed. So, Bob, let's get right into it. And first of all, the most important part of your week and your time at the Travelers Championship, how was the free-flowing Ben & Jerry's ice cream? You know I'm the most jealous about that part of your week.
Well, I've always been a big advocate of how they treat the media here in Hartford, Chris, and they did not disappoint again this year. Again, it's one of those deals where if you show up there at 8 in the morning, or if you show up at 3 in the afternoon, you're going to get your pick of the litter as far as buffets. And it goes from a breakfast to a lunch to a snack, but it's all gourmet stuff. And it's available all the time, and there's a non-ending flow of it. So you got to really pace yourself, Chris. It's the ultimate test of willpower, and I didn't really pass this year. Let's put it that way. So, but it's, again, just part of the Travelers experience that you and I have talked about, how they do it well every year. That's just a very small part of it, the hospitality of the media members.
And, Bob, I want to revisit the conversation that we got to have a couple of weeks ago with tournament director Nathan Grube. He talked about the extraordinary lengths that they go to in order to get the top players to come and play in that tournament. And it's not easy getting those top players to want to play an event either the week before or the week after, you know, an event like a major like the U.S. Open. And most players elect to skip those, right? And either rest up or practice up or go play some practice rounds at the site. Yet these guys get the top players. Guys like we mentioned Bubba Watson, Paul Casey, Bryson DeChambeau, Rory McIlroy, Jason Day, Justin Thomas, defending champion Jordan Spieth, and back-to-back U.S. Open champion Brooks Koepka, who kept his word and went and played there after winning the U.S. Open the week before. So talk about not only what Nathan said to us, but also, you know, what you heard and what you saw when you're covering that tournament every year.
Well, first and foremost, Chris, there's a reason why. At this point, the organizers, and I'm sure you got this idea when we talked to Nathan, they consider it a challenge now and one they'd like to meet head on every year. Of the logistics of this tournament happening right after the U.S. Open, it's a big challenge for them to get the players and to work probably twice as hard as anyone does on the tour to make this tournament go. And again, it just never ceases to amaze me how well they do at that. For example, last year, Chris, this was named the tournament of the year on the PGA Tour. In 2017, it was voted also the most fan-friendly tour. And probably the biggest honor was it was the Player's Choice. And that's something that you'd have to say is probably Nathan's biggest accomplishment. Player's Choice, especially when it's located after that U.S. Open, Chris, for them guys to still say, they treat us so well, and it's such good hospitality. I have to go. And that's kind of the case. Brooks Koepka got here, Chris, and he basically told a lot of people in the media tent, I'm just dead tired here, but I'm going to be here because that's what the Travelers do. And, of course, we can talk more about how all the proceeds go to charity and everything, but Koepka, I mean, did his -9 after being, like, totally exhausted and fatigued. So that shows you kind of a devotion right there of one man to this tournament. And again, just like you said, Chris, 5 of the top 10 players in the world came after the U.S. Open. They all shot under par, well under par. And again, after the tournament, a guy like Spieth came out and said, look, next year they're facing challenges because it's out in Pebble Beach the week before. I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it just because of my logistics myself. He says, but if I don't make it that year, I'll be sure to be there the next year. So that's how much respect they have for it right now. But there's many stories like that, but you get the idea that, again, those awards they won in 2017 were well-deserved.
And Bob, you mentioned scoring, and I want to talk a little bit about course conditions because we did see good scoring there, right? Bubba Watson winning with a score of 17 under par, a pair of 63s in his 4 rounds. Getting an opportunity to come make some birdies has got to be a welcome relief for these guys after how grueling it is to go play at the U.S. Open. But talk about the course layout and the course conditions there.
Oh, they love the course, Chris, and every year, you're right. I mean, just the time of the year it happens, end of June, it starts getting warm here. That course is known for getting a little spongy, a little humidity in the air. You might have a day or two of a few misty showers. It all plays into their hands. So many of these players, if you look at the final score, so many of them, Chris, were under 70 each day. I mean, all scores in the 60s for all 4 days. Just a matter of how low you can go. Course record here was 2009, I believe. Kenny Perry had a 258. That was 22 under par, Chris. It can go that low. And it's just very unpredictable because you know guys are going to be in the 60s every day. After day one, you had Spieth and Zach Johnson at 63. You said, with these guys' pedigree, there's a chance one of those guys is going to be there at the end. A guy like Bubba Watson shoots just par on the opening day and ends up winning the tournament. And that's what it's another thing is how unpredictable it can be. You can score on it. It's unpredictable. But in the conditions this year, Chris, Saturday the attendance was down a little bit because of the misty rain, but it was just spongy and humid enough without being totally crazy hot that it was ideal for scoring this year.
And Bob, with the guys that we mentioned, again, like Bubba and Rory and JT and Koepka, guys that, you know, can really knock the cover off the ball. I have to imagine you saw some amazing tee shots and some amazing golf shots walking around the golf course.
Oh, sure. It starts right off the bat when you see Bubba teeing off. I mean, he'll put one in your and you just see the people in the gallery just going, wow, you know. And of course, we saw Spieth at the beginning of the tournament holing out from another bunker like he did last year, which people were just having flashbacks about. Incredible, Chris. And I was able to follow Stuart Sink and Charlie Hoffman on the weekend. Pretty impressive guys that can hit the ball a long way. Stuart Sink loves this course, too. Another 2-time winner who was in the 60s every day and finished with a 62 on Sunday. If he had just played a little bit better, possibly Thursday, Friday, he would have been there. But he loves the course. Again, a multi-winner like Bubba Watson. And it was fun watching Stuart Sink and Charlie Hoffman. They're a good pair.
Yeah, and I want to build off a couple of things that you just said there, Bob. Particularly, let's start with Stuart Sink, right? You mentioned his final round 62, finished in a 4-way tie for second place, and he started to play really well over his last 3 tournaments. A tie for 4th at the FedEx St. Jude the week before the U.S. Open, then following his tie for second at the Travelers. He had 4 rounds in the 60s last weekend in the Quicken Loans National. And like you say, you got to follow him around on Sunday. What are you seeing from his game? Because a guy at 45 starting to really find it and find his way into the top 5, that's got to be encouraging for a guy like Sink.
Yes, because when you go back, when you think about it, Chris, he first won here over 20 years ago. And it's kind of amazing to me, because that was one of the first tournaments I attended. He won in 97. He also won in 2008, but that first win in 97, I actually got to talk to him personally, and you could just see the excitement on his face and how much he loved the course. He was staying at a local hotel, but he said, I don't even want to go back to the hotel. He spent so much time in the driving range and putting range, just loved the hospitality of the place, has come here so many years since. Again, two-time winner. I just think at this age, Chris, he's just so comfortable with that course. It was he had to play in this tournament to keep it going, and he was just very good. And this is a guy, again, he loves this course so much. He's known, in the past, he has said to tournament organizers about the 15th through 18th. Of course, the 16th, 17th, and 18th go around the 4-acre lake. And it can be a little challenging, but it's a lot of fun. But Stuart Sink has said about the 4 last holes, he says they are 4 of the most exciting finishing holes in a group anywhere in the world. That comes from Stuart Sink's mouth. So you know he loves the place. And again, he hit it at a good time where he knew he was going to do good here. So this was a confidence booster for him big time.
And Bob, you mentioned last year's tournament, which Jordan Spieth won in a playoff over Danile Berger on what was probably one of the most exciting shots of the whole golf year, with his hole out from the bunker and then subsequent chest bump with his caddy Michael Greller. That had to be a huge thrill to witness last year.
Oh, I've probably, I've covered sports for a long time, because I've never heard noise like that. I was probably 10, 11 deep on that 18th hole, kind of going up the hill a little bit, but the roar was something I've never heard at a baseball game or anything quite like it, and I really couldn't see Spieth and his caddy celebrating because of the sea of people in front of me, but we were watching TVs above and monitors, etc. It was just something you'll never forget. And again, that was another thing the Travelers had to deal with going into this tournament. Could they top that, which was almost impossible to do. But like I said, Spieth did a similar shot early in the tournament where people just were shaking their heads. So, yeah, that was a moment that Hartford will never forget.
And Bob, speaking of Jordan and the tournament this year, you mentioned his open round 63 had him in a tie for the lead on Thursday. Unfortunately, faded Friday and Saturday, shooting a collective 4 over par those 2 days. But did you get to see any of his rounds and get a taste for maybe why he's been struggling so much this season?
I did watch him a little bit on Friday, Chris. That was his worst day. I mean, you could tell. I mean, if you shoot over par in Hartford, it's a bad day for these guys. Is how good they are. And he shot over par both on Friday and Saturday. He didn't really say too much about it. He just said, golf is one of those games. He said anything can happen. Again, he was playing at a different time of the day on Friday and Saturday, and the conditions had changed a little, but he would never use that as an excuse. But he just kind of didn't keep it in the fairway, probably like he would have loved to do, and which he's known to do, Chris. Again, I don't know if any of the magic of last year was kind of overwhelming to him. I mean, the people that were following him were in the thousands. It was crazy, but he handled it well. And of course, he had those very nice things to say after the tournament that he would still welcome coming back here any year.
And the guy that he faced off in the playoff last year, Danile Berger, fared even worse than Jordan this year. Finished tied for 67th at even par. Did you get a chance to either see what Danile Berger was doing out there or hear his comments? I was a little surprised that neither one of those guys was really a factor this go around.
Yeah, when you hear Berger's name here, he's had a lot of success here. You expect him to always be good. And, when you shoot an opening round of 67 here, you say, oh, that's pretty good. But again, his second and third round, both scores were over par, and that's just not going to get it done here in Hartford. I mean, any other tournament, Chris, you shoot 67, 71, 73, 69, you might be doing pretty good. But here, again, on a par 70, Berger would be the first to tell you that's not going to be good enough. And again, the cut line -1. A lot of good players didn't make it, Chris, and that's what it is here. It's really competitive, and Berger was one of those guys. Again, has had a lot of success, but he'll try again next year.
Right. And getting back to Bubba quickly, he won this tournament for the third time. It was his third time winning this season as well. Billy Casper has won that event 4 times, so he's within 1 of tying Casper's record for the most tournament victories up there. He came, like we said, from 6 shots back to win this year. He came from 6 shots back to win there back in 2010. That was his first PGA Tour victory. And in 2015, he also beats Paul Casey in a playoff. Paul Casey being the guy that went into the final round with a big lead, only to have Bubba overcome him. But, your sense for, this tournament and Bubba, why do you think this tournament is such a good fit for his game and his eye?
He just gets on one of those rolls, Chris. A course like this is not going to give him any problem lengthwise, that's for sure. And a lot of par 4s, and he was just hitting so many great shots, great second shots. His approaches were incredible. He's just so good on this course. And after that second round of 63. Everybody kind of almost forgot about him. When you shoot even par in the first round here, you're like, hope he makes the cut. Well, he was just kind of telling the people in Hartford, I'm still around, I'm 63. Nobody probably would think that he could duplicate that on a Sunday, which he ended up doing. But he just loves the course, loves the people, hits the ball straight, and doesn't make many mistakes, Chris. And that's going to get him in the winner's circle a lot. And he probably will win this tournament again because he comes back every year and he loves it so much. But he was a pleasure to watch, and of course he's a crowd favorite. And when he donated $200,000, Chris, to charity out of his winnings, that brought the year total to $2 million to charity for the Travelers this year, which puts them at about $40 million since the inception back in the 50s when they started donating to local charities.
Yeah, and that's the next thing I wanted to ask you about, Bob, is really the impact this tournament has on the local community. You talk about what they do for charity, but talk about, how the community has rallied around this tournament every year for, as you point out, now for what, 50 years?
Well, I think they've been about 60 years or so, this Connecticut PGA Tour stop. They've donated, with the $2 million this year, Chris, about $40 million to surrounding charities. This year, the major beneficiary was Paul Newman's Hole in the Wall camp. It's right down the road from here. It benefits kids that have some major health problems, but it gives them a nice camping experience, Chris, with a lot of local schools and young kids at their age. They go visit. It's really I've been there, and it'll make tears come to your eyes. But what Newman did with that camp and what continues to do. But they were the major beneficiaries this year. And again, all the proceeds from the Travelers, net proceeds, go to charity every year. And again, what Chairman of the Travelers, Andy Bassett, and Nathan Grube have done to bring attention to this, it just keeps growing every year. And that donation by Bubba just made him godlike here.
I bet it did. Bob, just a couple more before we let you go. I want to fast forward a couple of weeks to the Open Championship at Carnoustie. Curious to get your thoughts. Who are you expecting to see on the top of the leaderboard come Sunday?
Boy, you got to look for guys that are both kind of well-rested, Chris, but hot at the same time. You wonder if a guy like Dustin Johnson will be able to bounce back. And of course, guys that I saw play, Spieth is going to probably be very, very competitive, and Koepka, guys that are just on a roll and probably in their prime at the top of their game. The conditions there, you just never know, Chris. You got to think of the guys maybe that did well at Shinnecock would go over to Carnoustie and have some success there. Maybe a Patrick Reed, somebody like that's now got the monkey off their back, that played well at Shinnecock, that can conquer another monster out that way.
So the question, that most people are asking, right, looking ahead to that tournament, is around Tiger Woods. Can Tiger be a factor? We've seen him play, very well. Obviously, this past weekend, a tie for fourth, albeit a very distant tied for fourth because Francisco Molinari practically lapped the field thanks to a ridiculous final round 62. But we've seen Tiger, come up in the top 10, a couple of top 5s. Wasn't really a factor in the Masters or the U.S. Open, obviously not making the cut at the Open. But do you think he can be a factor at Carnoustie?
Well, Chris, I watched him pretty closely this weekend at Quicken Loans. He shows you signs of the old Tiger. The guy is still an incredibly talented golfer. He just has trouble, Chris, on that back nine. It's like every tournament, a little problem here, a little bogey at the worst type of place, and then he'll follow it up with a big birdie, but he gets, a couple bogeys on that back nine, which always seem to set him back at a crucial time. Until he shows me that he can get that monkey off his back. As far as these bogeys on the back nine in these big tournaments, I got to think that there's going to be guys that I would pick before him. But again, nothing he does, being what he's accomplished in the past, nothing would surprise me.
Bob, let our listeners know, how can they follow you on social media, plus watch some of the great interviews that you've done over on the TV side as well?
You and I do a lot of tweeting, retweeting between ourselves. It's a lot of fun, Chris, at Bob_Lazzari. And then, of course, if you go to the YouTube channel, Monday Night Sports, go to YouTube and just type in Monday Night Sports 14, all one word. You'll have your choice of about 130 interviews where you can watch. Even one with Chris Mascaro is on there, so if you dig deep enough. So check it out, folks. And I look forward, Chris, to doing the football show with you on Thursday, and probably doing some golf shows in the future also.
Well, Bob, it's always a great privilege for me to get to spend some time with you, whether it's here talking some golf, which we've done for the first time this season, and like you say, hopefully we'll do it some more. And then, of course, together on our show Thursday Night Tailgate. So look forward to catching up with you just in a couple of days. And between now and then, my friend, have a wonderful and safe 4th of July. And I look forward to catching up with you on Thursday.
You please do the same, Chris. It's always my pleasure. And we'll talk then. Take care now.
All right, Bob. Take care. That is my Thursday Night Tailgate co-host, Bob Lazzari. And again, you can follow him on Twitter at Bob_Lazzari. His last name is spelled Lazzari. And did some great stuff. Always had some great columns out there that you can read his take on some things, whether it's in baseball, football, golf, what have you. Check that out. And then the Monday Night Sports 14 over on YouTube. He and our good friend Tony D'Angelo over on the TV side. Some great interviews with some wonderful athletes, again, across all genres of sports. So look forward to catching up with Bob here on Thursday night on our show Thursday Night Tailgate.